Hello everyone, my name is Nick Infernus, and welcome back to another list video where today we will be talking about Wave 10 of Transformers Legacy. By far the smallest wave of the entire line, at only 5 figures, yikes. And if waves 11 and 12 are anything to go by, it will remain that way. Now, while this is still a very small wave when compared to literally every single other wave in the line, it was still pretty good, though we are starting to see a trend where we're seeing less and less new molds as the line progresses. There's only one new mold in this wave and wave 11, and then wave 12 doesn't appear to have anything new aside from a couple of repaints. So it is unfortunate considering how many new molds we've already gotten this in this year of Legacy. But like I said, despite its size, this wave was still overall pretty good. So let's get into the list with an unfortunate rough patch as we have to talk about Strongarm. By far the only figure in this whole line to disappoint me twice, hence why I really don't like talking about it, and why I've always been so negative about it. Not only was it disappointing to find out that she was a retool of the Elita 1 mold that has a really stiff and awkward build while having a tedious transformation, okay, pretty decent posing, and an okay alt mode, but I heard people saying that this was better than that, so I got my hopes up, and yeah, so I just got my hopes up. I shouldn't have, and this ended up being worse. It has the same build problems, well, it has the same sculpt problems. The transformation is still not that fun, especially since it's way too simple. Not needle nose level simple, but way too simple for my taste. And it's even harder to pose because of the new kibble. The shoulder pads, in theory, are an interesting idea, but in practice, the fact that you always have to reposition them is annoying. And the alt mode looks fine, but I really don't think that the Elita 1 mold was a good fit for Strongarm, since she was a much bulkier fembot in Rid 2015 than Elita was in really any incarnation of any show that she's been in. So yeah, I don't plan on doing a worst of Legacy video, at least as of yet. So hopefully this is the last time I have to talk about Strongarm, because if I'm being honest, there is no figure in Legacy that I like talking about less. Now, moving on to a much lighter note, with a major leap in quality, we have at number 4, Sideburn. Now, I was already a fan of Shadow Striker from last year. It was an interesting idea doing kind of what Skyquake did, mixing the original toy with the show design. Though, while I liked her more as a figure, I did feel like she wasn't as successful as Skyquake in that department. Skyquake definitely captures what it was trying to go for more than Shadow Striker does, though as a figure, she's still pretty good. That being said, when you put that figure in the colors of the character that it was always meant to be, it really shines. As far as Sideburn's robot mode goes, I'd say the only things here that that I'm not really I'd say that overall the design of the figure looks great now that it's in Sideburn's colors. Though the only things that are really not that accurate are just the forearms that are the wrong color, they should be white instead of blue, and the coattails, which really shouldn't be there. Though I will profess that I do actually like those details, so I don't really mind them being there. Posing and transformation are about the same. Posing is average, but still pretty good, and the transformation has its annoying parts, but is never a total frustration. And I like the alt mode decently enough, and I understand that Hasbro doesn't have access to the Dodge Viper license. At least that's what I remember reading on TF Wiki. So I get why they couldn't give Sideburn that alt mode, but it still would have been nice to see them get close enough, since we know from various Studio Series releases that Hasbro is capable of getting close enough while not infringing on copyright, or at least infringing on a license. That's probably the exact same thing. But overall, still a good figure, and I find that I like this version of the mold better than Strongarm. Not by much, since it still has, the alt mode problems, and the transformation and alt and posing are still pretty much the same. But the robot mode does help the figure to put itself above the original. Plus, the blue flame decals on the vehicle mode definitely help. Now, Moving on to number 3, the only new mold of the wave, we have Cybertron Hotshot. A figure that's biggest and honestly only real problem is that it does not pose very well. It only has 90 elbows and 90 knees, and the toes really don't like staying flat on the ground. For some reason, they always try to pop up whenever I straighten them. And it has hot rod shoulders. If I'm being honest, probably one of the worst cases of hot rod shoulders I've seen during my time collecting. Now, that being said, everything else that it does is good to great, I'd say. The robot mode looks a good amount like the character from Cybertron, though it is very kibbly with all of the windshield and window pieces, especially the giant piece of clear plastic hanging off his butt. I don't know how accurate that is, as I haven't seen Cybertron. It's not really a great look on the figure, but considering, but it's not really the biggest issue. The transformation is actually what I'd call a simple but fun transformation. It does what it needs to do, and it's relatively satisfying. And the alt mode is sweet. For the only new mold of the wave, it's a pretty great figure, all things considered, if you are okay with just not posing it because it doesn't really do that well. Also comes with a cyber key. Fun stuff. And yes, I do like this more than the Armada version. The Armada version was a little frustrating at times. At number 2, whereas Sideburn was a repaint of a figure that I liked more than the original, Nucleus is a retool of a figure I love that I honestly like less than the original figure. But again, not by much. I'd say the only thing that's really dragging this down, well, the only things, is that the tolerances in the knees are tighter, which, you know, I like tight joints, but not too tight. This definitely feels too tight, and it can make the transformation, you know, a little frustrating to get through. And the booster pack in the back loves popping the roof piece up, so the alt mode doesn't really sit flush with itself. But otherwise, everything about this I actually like more than Magnius. The rock car mode has a much cooler aesthetic with the giant boosters on the back, and the gold is really nice, as is the very shiny silver paint. And honestly, I like this robot mode design more, with the head and, again, the shiny silver. And in general, I just like the shape of it more than Magnius. Magnius I still like more because, you know, it's a more fun figure to handle. But, you know, Nucleus, it's still the same mold, so it still has everything that I liked about Magnius, just with a paint deco that I happen to like more. And I'll be honest, I went back and forth between this and Hotshot. The fact that this poses better objectively is what put it over Hotshot, though I would still say that Hotshot is a more fun figure to transform. Now, with all that being said, there wasn't really any way that any of these figures were winning, because number 1 is the only Voyager of the line, or of the wave, Vector Prime. Now, an argument could be made that this is a little unfair because it's a Voyager winning over a bunch of Deluxes, but I remind you that my favorite figure of Wave 6 was Beachcomber, and Gears from the previous wave ended up overtaking one of the Voyagers, Silverbolt. So it is possible for a Deluxe to win over a Voyager. It just didn't happen in this case, mainly because they retooled this figure out of my favorite figure from Legacy Year 1, G-Axis. And, like, don't get me wrong here, I love G-Axis, but it definitely wasn't a perfect figure. The alt mode wasn't really great, and that's really all the problems I have. And I do give the alt mode on that figure some grace, because the thing he turned into in the Generation 2 comics, yeah, there's no way they were wrangling that out of the robot mode. And here, this is actually what I'd call a good case of retooling. Unlike Strongarm, where they took one of the more slim and more awkwardly built Fembot molds from recent years and used it to make a figure of a character who's meant to be a lot beefier. Here, they took a mold that already had some resemblance to the character they wanted to turn it into, and turned it into that character, retooling a whole bunch of stuff to make it look more like that character, like adding the shoulder pauldrons, retooling the entire chest area to have a new step in the transformation, and retooling the entire backpack. Sure, basically nothing below the legs happened, nothing below the legs got changed, but, you know, it still has the general silhouette of the character. You can still tell who the character is at a glance, and it captures the spirit of the character from the show. So as Vector Prime, I think this mold does wonders. And if I'm being honest, I actually might like this a little bit more than G-Axis. at least in terms of appearance. The sword accessory is also nice, since, you know, it's a sword on a figure that can actually fake some sword-wielding wrists, unlike Bludgeon. And the new cape looks really nice, and you do have some options with it. Posing's pretty much the same, except the hot rod shoulders can actually, you know, go up further, so, you know, more range there, and you can still cheat them to get out to the side. Plus, you still get the same, you know, more than 90 bend on the elbows and knees, and the very posable feet and the opening hands. And I think the head actually poses a little bit better. That might be wrong, but it's not as loose as it was on G-Axis. Transformation is pretty much the same, except for the new step in the chest where you rotate it around to reveal the alt mode details. And there are some new steps with the backpack. And the alt mode, I'll be honest, this is kind of... The alt mode was the one section that allowed Tarn to beat G-Axis for my favorite figure of Legacy. Well, how ironic is it that he got beat by the exact same mold that he defeated, because the alt mode is what puts this over Tarn. The fact that this is more accurate to Vector Prime's alt mode than G-Axis' alt mode was to his, that's what puts this over Tarn for me. So yeah, I'm just gonna say it. This is quite possibly my favorite figure in Legacy now, and I don't see that changing. Maybe I'm biased because I love the G-Axis mold, and this is basically just that as a new character, but with an actually accurate alt mode. But at the end of the day, it's just an excellent figure that's a lot of fun to mess with. It has some loose joints, I'll admit that, but G-Axis also had loose joints and I didn't mind it there. And I've actually seen this quite a bit at Target. It seems to be shell forming right now. Then again, that could just be because they're just putting it out. But even if you already have the G-Axis mold, I'd still say this is worth picking up because it's an example of retooling done right. But anyways, guys, that's going to be it for this Transformers Legacy list video. If you enjoyed, feel free to leave a like and subscribe for more fun content. I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care, and Godspeed.